Oh, man, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've been with you in this capacity. And I must say, I'm very excited, but also a little bit terrified. But, but it's good to be here. And what a time to be here. It is June. It is National Gay Pride Month. And in fact, it's Gay Pride Weekend in Dallas. I know when I first came to the Unity movement, one of the things that I was proudest of was that in Unity, long before it became fashionable, Unity embraced the LGBTQ community. I've always been proud of that. And so it's extra special for me to be here on Gay Pride Weekend. I won't hold you very long because I know you want to get out there to get to the Gay Pride Parade that starts at 2 o'clock. Okay. All right. As I prepared for today, I came across some information. You know, there's so much useless but also useful information out there these days. And it was a survey. It was a survey that was done in the early 2000s. It was commissioned by some folks who study sleep, which is an odd group to do a survey, but they did. And one of the things they looked at was the whole idea of making your bed. They surveyed about 2,000 people, and as you would imagine, they all had different perspectives and different experiences around something as simple as making your bed. But the people during the study took this up because they wanted to get a correlation between how people slept and their whole experience around making the bed. Now, as they began to extrapolate data, they shared a few things that they thought were interesting about this. And I know this study has some validity because it was on television. The Today Show talked about this study, so it must be valid. Okay? So they talked with the people who made their beds every day. And what they saw as a trait of those folks, that those folks are adventurous, they are confident, they have tremendous social skills, and also they're very high maintenance. Okay? But meanwhile, the people who didn't make their beds, this is a survey now. People who didn't make their beds, they were shy, they were moody, they were curious, and they were as sarcastic as all get out. Okay? Now, digging deeper into the data, they also found that the people who made their beds in the mornings, those were the I'm up in the morning and I'm ready to take on the world, and I don't even need an alarm clock. And they found that those folks gravitated a lot toward the technology industry and also the health industry. Now, our wonderful souls who didn't make their beds, they were night owls. The Turner Classic Movie Network all night long was their best friend. And they didn't hesitate to hit that snooze button just over and over and over again. Now, they also tended, supposedly, to work in business and finance. Now, that made me feel real good that the people who are running America from the business standpoint and my financial advisor, they're groggy and hungover from lack of sleep, but they're making financial decisions. So I felt just real good about that. Now, I come from a long line of bed makers. That was just something that you naturally did in my childhood because your house, at least according to my mother, always needed to be ready for anybody who might be visiting. And of course, it was a reflection on her housekeeping skills if people came in and beds were unmade and the house was in all kind of disarray. So at a very early age, I was taught to make my own bed. Not only because it had to look good for the neighbors or anybody else who happened to drop by, but because my mother and father also worked like crazy. I was reading in the paper this morning, Viola Davis has a new book out, and it's called Finding Me. And she describes in her childhood as saying, we were po. She said, the poor people were up here. We were po. We were less. We were even poorer than the poor people. So we were po as I grew up. And so my mother's working as a maid. My father's a laborer in the fields. And so they had a lot to do to keep our household together. one of my chores was to make the bed so that my mother would not have to be tasked with that. So I grew up making my bed. So let's fast forward. I go off to join the military. I'm in basic training. And guess what's the first thing that I am taught to do? Make my bed every morning. And by gosh, I excelled in it because I had already spent my entire childhood making the bed. In fact, I was amazed and appalled at the fact that there were young people in the world that didn't know how to make a bed. So I'm making hospital corners, and probably nobody even knows with fitted sheets, nobody even knows what a hospital corner is anymore, but I was a whiz at it. All right, fast forward, going through college, literally every day I made my bed. I graduate, I'm out on my own, I live alone. What do I do every morning? I get up and I make my bed because that's what you're supposed to do. All right, let's fast forward. Oh man, I fall in love. I meet a wonderful human being. We decide to set up housekeeping and cohabitate. And we are in this wonderful relationship. And guess what I do every morning? I don't make the bed. You can't make a bed if somebody is still in it. You can't make a bed if the person in it thinks, why make the bed? I'm just going to get back in it again. But never fear, guess what? We have a guest room. So guess what I get to do in the guest room? I get to make the bed. So there's a lot to be said for making a bed and not making a bed. For me, it was just a habit. It was something that I did, that I was taught to do, a skill. And what I did was, I wanted to take a look at that practice and how it came about and where it came from and some of the roots of it. But bed making is definitely a military thing I experienced, but also it's something that one of the people that I came across experienced as well. His name is Admiral William H. McRaven. He is a retired U.S. Navy commander. In fact, he was a Navy SEAL. And if you know anything about Navy SEALs, you know that they do life-risking stuff in rescues and those kinds of things. Even in their basic training, that's what they do. They risk life and limb, even just training to do the real thing. And so he's in training, and just like me, every morning he got up and he made the bed because that was an expectation. But also just like me, once he made it, he stood at attention while somebody came by and inspected that bed. Okay, it's very different having your mother inspect whether or not you've made the bed versus a drill sergeant. Who comes by, and just like in the movies, guess what? A coin is flipped onto the bed, and that coin needs to bounce at least once. That means you've made a good bed. And so, by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you will never do the big things right. Now, here's a Navy SEAL talking about the importance of making your bed and it being a great example of being faithful to do the little things. Being faithful to do the little things right and to do them consistently. So what I found was I made an immediate connection with that idea with a piece of scripture from Luke, the 16th chapter and the 10th verse. And it says, "He who is faithful with little is also faithful in much. And he who is dishonest with little is also dishonest with much." So I've got this Navy SEAL talking about being faithful even in the little things, and I've got this scripture reminding us how important it is to be faithful in little and much. So let's couple some of those ideas together and move a little bit further down the road. I have a friend who called me several weeks ago because, like most of us, or all of us, we are greatly concerned about what's happening in Ukraine. And like most of us, he was concerned about what could he do to help. What could I do? Where could I start? And I suggested, why don't you start with a little thing? Well, first of all, he's very clear. I'm not going to support a war. Even if it's the good guys, war is war. But what can I do? So if you're not going to do that, what about those people who are displaced? What about the refugees who are fleeing the country? And I suggest to him that he look at the Red Cross page, Red Cross Facebook page, and their fundraising page, and there's a button there where you can contribute to help the refugees who are going into Poland. The Red Cross had actually set up a whole service center there for refugees who were coming across the border. And so he went from feeling frustrated to realizing this little thing he could do in order to make a difference in the lives of some folks. Now, also when I looked at the whole idea around making your bed, there's also a saying, and I've said it, I don't know how many times, and I'm sure it has tripped off your tongue at some point or another. Well, I made that bed, I guess I'm just going to have to lie in it. Wow. I made that bed, I guess I'm just going to have to lie in it. And I can't believe how many years I've spent on this planet believing that. But then I ran up against unity principles and all that changed. But also, that's not just unique. The idea of just having to wallow in whatever has happened to you, we're not the only ones who have struggled with that. 2,500 years ago, the Buddha said to followers, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. If a man speaks or acts with evil thought, pain follows him. If a man speaks or acts with pure thought, happiness follows him, like a shadow that never leaves him. Imagine that thought, that single thought. I made my bed, I got to lie in it. So guess what? You've just disempowered yourself. You've just breathed into the universe hopelessness. So how do you move out of that kind of thing? One of our thought leaders, and has done some phenomenal work, you can still get his books, Eric Butterworth, talks about putting ourselves potentially on a, gosh, I'm glad I have notes, on a verbal diet, going on a verbal diet. And the whole idea of the verbal diet is that you spend several days being very much aware of what you're thinking and what you're saying, okay? Because if you look at unity principles, our whole concept is that what we speak, we call into being. So, if you are saying, boy, I can't do anything about what my situation is, guess what? That's what your situation is going to be. So the whole idea is to pay attention to what you're saying and thinking, because thought also becomes reality if we're not careful. So, being on a verbal diet for several days, the challenge is to speak and listen before you articulate anything. Put into word those things you want to manifest in life. So you don't have to remain in that negative bed, that sense of hopelessness. There is another book that I dearly love, and thank you again, Darcy and Sandra. It's called The Divine Matrix. And it's by Greg Braden, and I learned about it from Reverend Evan Wilkins. Some of you know him. And in this book, they spend a lot of time talking about actual scientific experiments and how those experiments can actually demonstrate things in the real world or even in the spiritual realm. They actually get some things reinforced through science that are true spiritually. Well, I'm not going to go into those things, but what I did want to share with you, he talks about a computer. A computer is a piece of hardware, just a thing in and of itself. The computer is really useless until you have programs that go into that computer. So programs like Word, where you can generate Word documents, or you've got Excel, where you can do those fabulous spreadsheets that were always a nightmare to me when my staff would bring them to me in my career days. And those kinds of things, or PowerPoint, where you can create wonderful slides like what you're seeing on the screen. So you've got the software, so he correlates or compares us to a computer. And I want to share with you what he says about that. For all intents and purposes, the operating system of a computer is fixed and doesn't change. In other words, it is what it is. When we want to see our computer do something different, we don't change the operating system. We change the commands that go into it. The reason why this is important is that consciousness appears to work in precisely the same way. If we think of the entire universe as a massive consciousness computer, then consciousness itself is the operating system, and reality is the output of that operating system. Just as a computer's operating system is fixed and changes must come from the programs that speak to it, in order to change our world, we must alter the programs that make sense to reality. Those programs, our feelings, our emotions, our prayers, our beliefs. So he sees that as those places as starting points for us not only to change the world, to change ourselves, but in changing ourselves, we can begin to change the world. Now, I know when we think and act about change, sometimes we need a starting point. And for a lot of us, that's New Year's Day. We're going to make brand new resolutions, and we're going to start anew. Or sometimes for us, it's let's wait till the next burning bowl ceremony, and I'll get started then, just right away. A lot of us, it's at Christmas time. You know, Christmas time is a season of giving and joy, and we feel so open-hearted at Christmas because of what's going on, and there's nothing wrong with that. But start now. And in fact, I want to share something with you that is from Howard Thurman. That's not a name you know, but he played a phenomenal role in the civil rights movement. In fact, he was a kitchen table counselor for Martin Luther King and several other folks who were very active. And he had a work that actually Reverend Karen shared with us quite a while back, a poem that he calls "Now the Work of Christmas Begins." I'll share it with you just very quickly. When the song of angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flocks, the work of Christmas begins. The work of Christmas begins to find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among the people, to make music in the heart. And so, as we begin to think about being faithful and doing the little things and doing them consistently, can't help but ask the question, so what is it that is mine to do? What is it that is mine to do? Is it to find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry? Whatever that thing is. Is it to save the animals, to take care of Mother Earth? What is it that is mine to do? And I have to say that to you because you know what? You came to this planet with something to do. You're not here by accident. You're not here by coincidence. And not only did you come here with something to do, you came here fully gifted with whatever you need to do it. But sometimes we have to get out of that, I've made my bed, I'll just lie in it mentality in order to be about the business that we in fact were here to do. Now, I can't tell you what that is. Only you know that. Only you know what burns in your heart. Only you know those desires. But I encourage you to take the time to look at that whole idea of what is it that is mine to do. I'm going to sort of head toward a close and share with you a story that took on a little bit of a significance for me because I started to look at this whole idea of starfish. Did you know that starfish can live as long as 35 years? I did. Most of the time when we see starfish on a beach, we think, oh, that's a life that'll be over in 5 minutes or whatever. And they can, in fact, live for a very long time. But they have to have the right circuit starfish. So as they walk and talk, the one person will stop and pick up a starfish and throw it into the ocean. They walk a little further, and this person again stoops down and picks up a starfish and tosses it into the ocean. And so the person walking with him at one point says, "Why are you doing that? Why are you wasting your time doing that? There's hundreds of them. You can't fix this. There's nothing you can do about this." And with that, the person stoops down and picks up another starfish, and he says, "But it makes a difference to this one," and throws it into the ocean. Picks up another one, and he says, "It makes a difference to this one." Where you are right now, what are you called to do to make a difference for this one? Where are you being faithful in the small things so that it leads to something more and something more and something more and ultimately makes a difference for this one? Get on your verbal diet. Set yourself free of whatever it is that's hindering you, be it the past, a memory, an experience, whatever, so that you can be about the business of making a difference to this one. Start making a difference to one and ultimately make a difference in the world itself. Feel the call for something more. Ask the question of yourself, what am I here for? Beautiful song, Rachel. Feel the call for something more. Ask the question of yourself, what am I here for? And then go a step further. Get out of your comfort zone for something you've never done before. So get up, folks. Wake up. Make up your bed and change the world. Uni Young Greenville, you're always a blessing to me. Thank you. Namaste.